The moment I realized my ex had leaked my private photos and I would expose his darkest secrets to the world in return, I felt something inside me crystallize into pure, calculated ice. The notification on my phone might as well have been a death sentence, but not for me, for him. It started with a text from my best friend Sarah. The words burned themselves into my retinas. "Hun, I'm so sorry. Check your DMS. People are sending around photos of you." My hands trembled as I opened Instagram. The first message made my stomach drop through the floor. A screenshot, my own body staring back at me from someone else's phone. A photo I'd sent to Jake 3 months ago, when I still thought he loved me, when I still believed in the sweet lies he whispered about forever. The room started spinning. I counted 17 messages. 17 strangers who had seen me naked, vulnerable, trusting. Photos I'd taken in the soft morning light of Jake's apartment, believing they were sacred between us. Photos that were now currency in some twisted game of humiliation. My chest felt like it was caving in. I couldn't breathe. The air in my apartment became thick, suffocating. I stumbled to the bathroom and gripped the sink, staring at my reflection. The same body that had trusted Jake, that had believed his promises, that had given him everything. Now it was being passed around like a joke. I threw up twice. When I finally steadied myself, I called him. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. When he answered, his voice was casual, almost bored. He'd been expecting this call. I could hear the smirk in his voice as he spoke, the way he always sounded when he thought he'd won something. He didn't deny it, didn't even try to lie. He told me I should have thought about consequences before I broke up with him, should have considered what happened to girls who thought they were too good for him. The line went dead. I sat on my bathroom floor for 2 hours, shaking. Not from fear, from rage. Pure, white-hot rage that started in my chest and spread through my entire body like poison. He thought he could destroy me and walk away clean. He thought I was just another naive girl who would curl up and disappear. He was wrong. I picked up my phone and opened my laptop. Time to remember everything I knew about Jake Morrison. Time to remember every secret he'd whispered in the dark, every shame he'd confessed, every lie he'd told to everyone else. Time to remember why I'd broken up with him in the first place. See, Jake had made one crucial mistake. He'd forgotten who he was dealing with. I wasn't just some random girl he could humiliate and discard. I was someone who had lived with him for 8 months. Someone who had access to his passwords, his social media, his family's contact information. Someone who knew about his job, his friends, his carefully constructed image of being the perfect boyfriend. Someone who knew about Madison. Madison, his co-worker who he'd been texting for months. Madison, who he'd been meeting for coffee while telling me he was working late. Madison, who had no idea she was the other woman because Jake had never mentioned having a girlfriend. I opened my notes app and started typing. Every lie, every secret, every moment of manipulation I'd witnessed. The time he'd stolen $20 from his roommate's wallet. The way he talked about his female co-workers. The racist jokes he made when he thought no one was listening. The fact that he'd been fired from his last job for sexual harassment but told everyone he quit. But Madison was just the beginning. I remembered the night he'd gotten drunk and told me about his stepfather. How Jake had been embezzling money from his stepfather's small business for months, skimming cash from the register when he worked there part-time. How he'd been building a secret savings account while his stepfather's business struggled. I remembered his best friend Derek's wedding, where Jake had hooked up with the bride's sister in the bathroom, while Derek was saying his vows. While Jake was standing there as best man, smiling like he hadn't just betrayed his oldest friend an hour earlier, I remembered the pills. The Adderall he bought from college kids and resold to his coworkers. The way he'd laughed about how easy it was to make money off desperate people trying to keep up with their jobs. My fingers moved across the keyboard like they were conducting an orchestra of destruction. Each memory was a weapon, each secret a bullet I was loading into a gun I was about to point directly at his life. But I needed proof. Memories weren't enough. I needed evidence. I still had access to his iCloud account. He'd never changed the password after we broke up, probably didn't even remember that I knew it. I logged in and started downloading. Text messages, photos, emails, everything. The messages with Madison were worse than I'd imagined. Screenshots of her Instagram posts with heart eye emojis. Plans to meet up that aligned perfectly with nights he'd told me he was working late. Photos she'd sent him. Photos he'd sent her. I found the messages with Derek's wife's sister. Explicit photos from the wedding bathroom. Messages about how easy it was to fool Derek, how pathetic he was for trusting Jake. I found the drug-dealing messages. Names, prices, locations, a whole network of transactions that would make his corporate job very, very interested. I found the evidence of the embezzlement, bank statements, photos of cash, messages to his stepfather's business partner about borrowing, money that was never paid back. I found messages to his mother, messages where he lied about having a girlfriend, where he made up stories about his job, where he asked for money while hiding his drug-dealing income. I found messages to his ex before me. Messages that proved he'd been cheating on her with me, that he'd been lying to both of us for months. I found messages where he bragged about the photos he'd taken of me. Messages where he talked about revenge. Messages where he planned exactly how he would humiliate me. I found messages where he discussed doing the same thing to other girls, where he talked about having a whole collection of photos from different relationships, where he and his friends shared images like trading cards. By 3 a.m., I had everything. Every lie, every betrayal, every secret wrapped up in a neat digital package. I had enough evidence to destroy his relationship with Madison, his friendship with Derek, his relationship with his family, his job, and possibly his freedom. But I wasn't finished. I was just getting started. I spent the next week planning. Not just what I would reveal, but how. Not just who I would tell, but when. This wasn't going to be a random explosion of anger. This was going to be surgical, precise, devastating. I created fake social media accounts. I researched his coworkers on LinkedIn. I found his stepfather's business Facebook page. I memorized Derek's wife's Instagram handle. I figured out which coffee shop he and Madison met at, which gym they went to, which restaurant they had their secret dates at. I printed everything. Screenshots, bank statements, messages. I organized them in folders like I was preparing for trial. In a way, I was. Every morning I woke up and felt the rage burning steady and cold in my chest. Every night I fell asleep planning the next phase of his destruction. I stopped crying. I stopped shaking. I became something harder, sharper, more focused than I'd ever been. Jake had made me into this. He'd taken someone who loved him and turned her into someone who would methodically demolish his entire life. He'd created his own monster, and now she was coming for him. I started with Madison. I created a fake Instagram account and messaged her. Told her I was an old friend of Jake's and thought she should know something important about the guy she'd been seeing. I sent her screenshots of his messages to me, timestamps proving he'd been dating both of us simultaneously. I sent her photos of us together, photos that proved we'd been living together while he was telling her he was single. I sent her the messages where he called her pathetic for falling for his lies, the messages where he mocked her appearance to his friends, the messages where he bragged about how easy it was to manipulate her into believing he cared about her. I sent her everything, then I waited. She confronted him that same day. I know because I was watching his social media activity like a hawk. I saw him frantically calling her, saw him messaging his friends asking for advice on crazy exes. I saw him posting a story about how some people can't handle being dumped. Madison blocked him on everything. She also posted her own story. A long, detailed account of how Jake Morrison was a lying, cheating piece of garbage who had been manipulating multiple women. She tagged his location, his workplace, his friends. She shared screenshots of his messages. The story was shared 67 times in the first hour. But I wasn't done with Madison. I messaged her from my real account. Told her about the photos he'd been sharing, about the way he'd talked about her to his friends. I told her about the other women, the pattern of behavior, the way he systematically destroyed people who trusted him. Madison was furious, not just at Jake, but at the situation. She became my ally without even realizing it. She started sharing information about where Jake would be, what he was doing, how he was reacting to the fallout. Next, I moved on to Derek. I created another fake account and messaged Derek's wife. Told her I had some information about her wedding that she needed to see. I sent her the photos from the bathroom, the messages between Jake and her sister, the way Jake had bragged about ruining Derek's wedding day. Derek's wife called her sister immediately. The sister confessed everything. Derek's wife called Derek. Derek called Jake. I watched Jake's world collapse in real time through social media. Derek posted a long message about betrayal and friendship, about how some people will smile to your face while stabbing you in the back. He didn't mention Jake by name, but everyone knew who he was talking about. Jake's phone was probably ringing nonstop. His best friend since college had just cut him off completely. His wedding invitation to Derek's cousin next month? Rescinded. His access to Derek's friend group? Gone. I could picture him sitting in his apartment, probably drinking, probably trying to figure out how his life was falling apart so quickly, probably trying to figure out who was behind it all. But I wasn't even close to finished. I printed out all the evidence of his drug dealing and mailed it to his HR department. Not an email, a physical package with his name on it, his employee ID number, and a note explaining that they might want to look into Jake Morrison's side business. I included bank statements showing unexplained cash deposits, screenshots of drug transactions, and a helpful list of which co-workers he'd been selling to. I called his stepfather's business from a payphone and asked to speak to the owner. I told him I was a former business partner of Jake's, and I had some concerns about missing inventory and cash discrepancies. I suggested he might want to check his books, particularly the cash register reports from days when Jake worked alone. I mailed copies of the embezzlement evidence to his stepfather's house. All of it. Bank statements, photos of cash, messages discussing the theft. I included a note explaining that I was a concerned customer who had witnessed irregularities and thought the family should know. I created a comprehensive document outlining every lie Jake had told his mother, every request for money while hiding his drug income, every fake story about his job, his relationships, his life. I mailed it to her with a note saying I was a friend who thought she deserved to know the truth about her son. I sent screenshots of his messages about having a collection of private photos to every woman I could identify in his phone. Past girlfriends, classmates, co-workers. I told them he'd been sharing intimate photos without consent, and they should check if they were victims. I posted anonymous reviews on every website associated with his stepfather's business, warning people about an employee who had been stealing from the company. I included enough detail to make it clear I was talking about Jake without actually naming him. I created a fake LinkedIn profile and sent connection requests to all of his co-workers. I then sent them anonymous messages about Jake's drug dealing, his inappropriate behavior with female employees, his lies about his qualifications. I waited until Friday afternoon to make the final move. I created a comprehensive website, a single page with Jake's full name, his photo, his address, his workplace, and every single piece of evidence I'd collected. Screenshots of his messages, photos of his crimes, testimonials from his victims. I organized it all into categories: drug dealing, embezzlement, cheating, revenge porn, lies to family, betrayal of friends. I called it The Truth About Jake Morrison. I bought targeted ads on Facebook and Instagram. Anyone who lived in our city, anyone who worked at his company, anyone who went to his gym or his favorite restaurants would see an ad for the website. I targeted his family members, his co-workers, his friends, his neighbors. I posted the link in every local Facebook group, every college alumni group, every neighborhood forum, every dating group with a warning about a dangerous man who shares private photos without consent. I sent the link to his mother, his stepfather, his siblings, his aunts and uncles. I sent it to his boss, his co-workers, his clients. I sent it to Derek, to Madison, to every person in his phone whose number I had access to. I printed out flyers with his photo and a QR code linking to the website. I put them on car windshields in his neighborhood, on bulletin boards at his gym, on tables at his favorite coffee shop. By Saturday morning, The Truth About Jake Morrison had been viewed over 3,000 times. By Sunday, Jake Morrison no longer had a job. His company's HR department had received dozens of complaints about the website, about his drug dealing, about his inappropriate behavior. They conducted a weekend investigation and terminated him Monday morning. His stepfather's business posted a message on their Facebook page distancing themselves from Jake and announcing that they were cooperating with police regarding theft allegations. Derek's wife posted a message thanking anonymous sources for bringing important information to her attention and warning other women about Jake's behavior. Madison started a group chat with Jake's other victims. They were sharing stories, supporting each other, and planning to take legal action against him. Jake's mother called him and told him not to come home for family dinner until he got his life together. The local police opened an investigation into his drug dealing activities. His apartment complex received so many complaints about a resident sharing revenge porn that they began eviction proceedings. His dating profiles were reported and banned from every app. His social media accounts were flooded with comments from people who had seen the website. Jake Morrison, who had thought he could humiliate me and disappear, had instead become the most hated man in our city. I watched it all unfold from my apartment, sipping coffee and feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks: peace. Not happiness, not satisfaction, but a cold, clean peace. The kind of peace that comes from balancing the scales, from making sure actions have consequences. He tried to call me. I didn't answer. He tried to text me. I didn't respond. He tried to email me, to message me on social media, to contact me through friends. I was a ghost to him now, just like he'd tried to make me a ghost to myself. But I knew he knew it was me. Who else could have accessed his accounts, could have known his secrets, could have orchestrated something so comprehensive and devastating? Who else had the motivation, the knowledge, the sheer determination to burn his entire life to the ground? I was the girl he'd underestimated. The girl he'd thought he could destroy with a few leaked photos. The girl he'd forgotten was smart, patient, and absolutely ruthless when pushed too far. 3 weeks after the website went live, Jake moved out of the city. I heard through mutual friends that he'd found a job in another state, that he was trying to start over somewhere nobody knew his name. But the internet is forever. The website was archived. The screenshots were saved. The truth about Jake Morrison would follow him wherever he went. I never took the website down. I never deleted the evidence. I never apologized for what I'd done, because I wasn't sorry, not even a little bit. Jake had taught me an important lesson about consequences, about how actions ripple outward, how betrayal echoes back, how the weapon you choose to destroy someone else can end up destroying you instead. He'd wanted to humiliate me, to make me feel small and powerless and ashamed. Instead, he'd created someone who would methodically and precisely demolish every aspect of his life. He'd turned someone who had loved him into someone who would never stop ensuring he faced consequences for his actions. I wasn't the same person who had cried on the bathroom floor that first day. I'd evolved into something harder, something more dangerous, something that understood exactly how to hurt someone who had hurt me. I'd become the consequence he'd never seen coming, and in the end, that felt like exactly the right person to be. The last message I ever sent Jake was simple. Now you know how it feels to have your private life exposed to the world. The difference is, everything I shared about you was true. I blocked him on everything and moved on with my life. But I kept the evidence, all of it. Because men like Jake Morrison don't learn from consequences, they just get better at hiding their crimes. And I wanted to make sure he never forgot that somewhere out there, someone knew exactly who he really was. Someone who had proved that underestimating the wrong woman could cost you everything. The photos he'd leaked of me were forgotten within a week, buried under the avalanche of his own exposure. But the truth about Jake Morrison would follow him forever, a digital scarlet letter that would remind him that actions have consequences, that trust is sacred, and that some people will make you pay for every single lie you've ever told. I sleep peacefully now, knowing that somewhere Jake Morrison is lying awake, wondering if today will be the day someone recognizes him, someone sees the website, someone realizes who he really is. I sleep peacefully, knowing that he'll never be able to hurt another woman the way he hurt me without facing the consequences. I sleep peacefully knowing that sometimes the best revenge is simply the truth.